Hi guys, so for today's lesson we're going to be dealing with a introduction to ratios. So what do I mean by a ratio? So it's a relationship between two quantities, two amounts. So for example, consider the relationship between the quantities of water and rice when you're cooking rice. So like when you're doing this recipe, you've got to make sure you follow this recipe in a certain way, and that's what I mean by this word relationship. So the relationship is when you're cooking rice, is you must have double the amount of water compared to rice. Now there's a really important concept to understand, and we can simplify this sort of relationship into a nice, what we call a ratio. So i.e., 1 cup of rice equals 2 cups of water, because you had to have double the amount of water compared to rice. So if you've got 1 cup of rice, you've got to double it, so it becomes 2 cups. So we can simplify this. 1 cup of rice equals 2 cups of water. That becomes 1 cup to 2 cups. And instead of writing the word cups, we can pretty much say 1 to 2. And we put these this colon in between. So when I see that, I think the words 1, 2, 2. So this thing here is pretty much saying 2, like T-O. Okay, so this is the ratio for rice and water. So the 1 represents the rice and the 2 represents the water. Okay. So next word that we need to understand is what an equivalent ratio is. So it's a ratio that contains completely different numbers but represents the same ratio. So note, you can multiply or divide both sides of a ratio by the same number to make an equivalent ratio. So for example, let's deal with this ratio 1 to 2, which we got from our rice and water. So 1 to 2 is equivalent to say if we're multiplying both sides by 5. So 1 times 5 makes 5, and 2 times 5 makes 10. So 1 to 2 is equivalent to 5 to 10. And what that's pretty much saying is, so like this was our rice to water ratio. Our 1 cup of rice needs 2 cups of water. Say instead, if we had 5 cups of rice, we need double that. So we have to double our 5 cups, so that makes 10 cups of water. So even though this ratio over here is representing a lot more rice and water, it still follows that basic recipe of having double the amount of rice. So it's pretty much just following the same relationship, these two ratios. This one's just on a bigger sort of scale, if that makes sense. Okay, let's try another one. Say if you have a ratio 12 to 36, that is equivalent to, say if you divide both of them by 12, you've got to divide both of them by the same number, just like we did here. We times both numbers by the same number 5, and we get 12 divided by 12 is 1, and 36 divided by 12 is 3. So 12 to 36, that's equivalent to 1 to 3. And typically we like to deal with the smaller ratios because they're a little bit more simpler to understand. Okay, so let's do some example questions. So a mixed bag of nuts contains 5 cashews, 3 peanuts, and 11 macadamias. So that makes sense. Determine the ratio of cashews to peanuts. So what we pretty much do is we're just looking for the right numbers, really. So the number of cashews is 5, so 5 goes first, and the number of peanuts is 3, so 3 goes there. So our ratio is going to be 5 to 3 for cashews to peanuts. So simple as that. So that, final answer. Question B, the ratio of macadamias to the total number of nuts. So how many macadamias are there? There's 11 macadamias. And then to the total number of nuts, how many nuts in total? Well, we can just add our 5, 11, and 3, and that gets a total of 19. So our answer is 11 to 19. Macadamias to the total. So, and simple as that, done. Next up is the ratio of peanuts to other nuts. So how many peanuts are there? Well, there's 3 peanuts. And then how many other nuts are there other than peanuts? So if there's 3 peanuts and there's 19 in total, that means the rest are There's 16. There was 11 macadamias and 5 cashews. So that's 16 in total other nuts. So your final answer is 3 to 16. Question 2, complete the equivalent ratios. So we give you a ratio, a completed one, and that's equivalent to this one, but we need to figure out what this number is going to be. So the idea is that we can see that our 5 changed to 10. It was multiplied by 2. So the idea is what you do to this number, or what's happened to this number, has to happen to the other number as well. So you must do the same to this 7. So the 7 has to get multiplied by 2 as well. So it becomes a 14. So now that we've figured out that was 14, we're done. Next one, a little bit trickier. We don't know this middle number, and we don't know this first number over here. So we look at this ratio and we think, how do we go from this ratio to this ratio right here? Well, first up, we can see that if we go from this ratio back to this first one here, we can see that, that the 8 was multiplied by 5. So because that 8 was multiplied by 5, we have to do the same to this 10. Multiply it by 5 as well. So the 10 gets multiplied by 5, and that's how we can find our pink box. So that becomes a 50 right there. For the blue box, we can go from this ratio back to this one. We can see that our 40 got divided by 5 to go this way. So 40 divided by 5 gives you our 8. So we have to do the same thing, divide by 5. We have to do that to this 5 to figure out what our blue box is. Okay, so 5 divided by 5, that equals 1, and so we get our answer. So we can see that this pink box is 50 and the blue box is 1. Completed. That ratio there is exactly the same as this ratio. You're allowed to have more than 2 numbers. So this is called 5 to 50 to 40 is equal to 1 to 10 to 8. Simple as that. Good luck with the questions. Bye.